In the opening seconds, the corridor stands silent, lit only by thin emergency lights, dust moving like drifting ash as the camera glides past warped filing cabinets and half-melted drawers. A charred folder lies open, its title barely readable. Incident reports, staff records, and inside a burned photograph shows 5 employees circled in red ink, marked missing. This sets the tone for the story of the 1988 Boston Archive fire, officially labeled an unfortunate electrical failure, yet internally regarded as one of the most quietly buried catastrophes in the city's administrative history. The fire was suspicious enough, but the real mystery began a year earlier, when 5 employees vanished without explanation. The archive itself was a labyrinthine, 8-floor government structure housing nearly 3 million documents, land deeds, microfilm, sealed court files, industrial permits, and photos spanning almost a century. Beneath it, a fortified basement chamber called the Deep Room stored the rarest materials under strict temperature control. Staff joked it could survive the end of the world, and ironically, when the fire reduced most of the building to ash, that room did survive.
The first disappearance came in September 1987, when junior archivist Michael L. left his shift and never returned home. His car was found 2 blocks from the archive, doors locked, keys still in the ignition. No struggle, no witnesses. 2 weeks later, index technician Ruth D. vanished. Her apartment was undisturbed, breakfast dishes in the sink, purse missing as if she left normally, but she never arrived at work. The third disappearance involved a night guard, Caldwell, last seen on camera at 9:12 p.m. on October the 19th. His cap was later found on the floor by the service elevator. Logs showed someone accessed the basement at 9:23 p.m., but the cameras had been malfunctioning for weeks. 2 preservation specialists disappeared next, during a lunch break in December. Their coats remained on the rack, microwave still running, and a cup of coffee left warm. One moment they were chatting, the next they were gone. Despite 5 vanishings, administration insisted they were unrelated. Staff whispered otherwise. By early 1988, tension inside the archive was so thick workers spoke in hushed voices, glancing at the corners where motion sensors had stopped responding. Strange reports circulated, footsteps in locked stairwells, lights flickering in the deep room corridor, boxes rearranging themselves overnight. Official memos dismissed these concerns as stress-related. Then, on March the 3rd, at 2:14 a.m. the fire alarms erupted. Flames tore through the 2nd and 3rd floors with unnatural speed, melting shelves and collapsing entire sections within minutes. Firefighters later said the blaze behaved like it already knew the building. The electrical panel was the first to be blamed, but investigators privately noted something odd. The fire originated simultaneously in 3 separate areas, none connected by wiring. The city halted that line of inquiry immediately. When the smoke finally cleared, the main archive floors were a blackened wreck. Entire decades of records were gone. It should have been the end, until a recovery team reached the deep room. Despite heat reaching lethal levels elsewhere, its vault remained intact. Inside, the air was strangely cold. Boxes were neatly stacked, untouched by smoke, but someone had moved them. Rows were reorganized in ways no worker recognized. And at the center of the room, beneath flickering emergency lights, lay a metal cart with an unlabeled folder resting on top. The folder contained photographs shot on a large format camera decades earlier. Each depicted the same room, concrete walls, a metal table, and a single chair bolted to the floor. In every photo, a different person sat in the chair, sometimes looking terrified, sometimes vacant, sometimes unconscious. Every subject was later identified as one of the 5 missing employees. And the final photo, taken long after their disappearances, showed the chair empty, but the shadows behind it seemed wrong, twisted, as if something had been standing there. Investigators quietly sealed the deep room and removed all materials under police escort. No public report was filed. Families of the missing were told there was no new information. Then, abruptly, the case was closed. For years, rumors persisted, stories of a hidden sub-basement, unauthorized experiments, lost evidence. The city denied everything, but the footage recovered decades later from an overlooked storage locker changed the entire perspective. In the shaky black and white video, A camera sweeps through the deep room just days before the fire. A figure can be seen at the far end, still, silent, partially obscured by shelving. When the camera zooms in, the figure appears to be one of the missing employees, except the timestamp shows it was recorded 3 months after their disappearance. In the months following the disaster, official statements grew increasingly contradictory. Early press releases insisted that no human remains were found in the ashes, yet leaked internal memos referenced partial biological material. Fire inspectors initially claimed accelerants were detected, then recanted, then refused to comment entirely. The city council held a closed-door meeting about security breaches on the night of the fire, but records of that meeting vanished, ironically, from the very registry that had just been rebuilt. Journalists who pushed for transparency reported strange encounters: unmarked cars idling outside their homes, anonymous calls warning them to leave the past buried, and, in one case, the reporter's notes disappearing from a locked desk drawer. All these incidents painted a picture that the fire might have been less an accident and more a cover designed to eradicate whatever was happening inside the archive. Yet whispers persisted among surviving staff. They spoke of a restricted wing beneath the known basement, an area not shown on blueprints but referenced in outdated maintenance logs. That wing, they said, housed Project Vessel, a little-known federal contract supposedly dormant since the 1960s. According to rumors, the project involved psychological endurance testing, sensory isolation, and undocumented interviews with individuals who had access to sensitive historical material. Some former employees recalled hearing faint electrical sounds from vents along the basement corridor, even during power outages. Others described an elevator panel with a missing button, an empty slot where a floor designation once existed. No one admitted to traveling there, but the fear in their voices was unmistakable. As researchers later revisited the salvage site, another anomaly surfaced. In a stack of warped microfilm reels recovered from a fireproof drawer, one reel contained frames that didn't correspond to any cataloged record. Instead of census logs or immigration papers, it showed rapid sequences of still images: a corridor, a door marked with an unfamiliar federal seal, and a dark room illuminated only by a single hanging bulb. Most unsettling was the final frame. It depicted the same metal chair seen in the recovered photographs, only this time, the chair was occupied by a figure whose face had been violently scratched out on the film. The scratches were jagged, erratic, and layered, as though multiple attempts were made to erase the identity. Lab analysts later confirmed the reel showed no signs of manual tampering. Instead, the emulsion appeared altered from within, as if exposed to heat or pressure inconsistent with any known fault. In 2006, a whistleblower claiming to be a former federal archivist contacted an independent documentary team. She provided a single page torn from what she called the vessel intake ledger. The page listed 5 names, the same employees who disappeared, each accompanied by a date and a cryptic note reading, "Transfer completed." The dates corresponded not to their disappearances, but to the week before the fire. She refused to give further details, saying only that she had been warned never to speak of that place again. Days later, she cut all communication. Her email vanished from servers, her phone number deactivated, her identity effectively erased from professional databases. As investigators attempted to rebuild the archive's lost timeline, a pattern emerged, one that had been overlooked for years. Each of the 5 missing employees had accessed the same classified storage room during their final week on record. The room, numbered C41B, was officially listed as a temporary document overflow chamber, yet no surviving floor plans placed it anywhere within the known structure. According to the last surviving security log, all 5 employees entered C41B separately, usually late at night, staying inside for periods ranging from 9 to 27 minutes. None of them ever scanned out. The log simply ended. The digital copy was corrupted beyond recovery, and the paper backups, kept in a locked steel cabinet, were among the first objects to burn, despite being located far from the fire's documented point of origin. Meanwhile, the few surviving documents retrieved from the lower levels painted a grim picture. Among charred folders and waterlogged boxes, archivists discovered a set of handwritten interview transcripts dated months before the disappearances. The interviews described individuals who reported observing shadowed movement near the restricted corridors late at night, as well as hearing metallic clanging sounds beneath the archive floor, sounds resembling machinery starting and stopping. Even though the building contained no heavy mechanical equipment, one janitorial staff member claimed he had followed the noise to a maintenance hatch sealed with bolts he had never seen before. When he returned the next day with a supervisor, the hatch was gone, replaced with a seamless stretch of wall. The deeper forensic teams dug, the more anomalies surfaced. Fire-retardant storage boxes found in the remains were rated to withstand up to 2 hours of direct flame exposure, yet many had burned through completely in under 20 minutes according to timeline reconstruction. Several reels of microfilm were fused into solid blocks, something only seen when exposed to temperatures far exceeding a standard building fire. Oddly, some fragile paper documents only centimeters away remained completely intact, as though selectively shielded. The inconsistency suggested that the fire behaved unnaturally, intense in specific zones, weak in others, almost as if it had targeted certain materials rather than spreading organically. By late 1989, rumors circulated among former employees that a federal task force had been assigned to retrieve missing equipment from the ruins before reconstruction crews arrived. Truck drivers reported seeing crates being removed under tarps late at night, escorted by personnel with no identifiable insignia. One driver recalled a metallic humming emanating from one of the containers, like a low engine vibration, that continued even after the truck was shut off. When he asked about it, he was told, "Don't worry, it's already deactivated." What, exactly, had been activated in the first place? And why did every trace of it have to be removed before sunrise? As pressure mounted to close the investigation, an independent research group obtained access to a partially restored section of the basement, reconstructed during early cleanup. Hidden between two collapsed shelving units, they found a deformed metal locker that had somehow escaped both fire and water damage. Inside were several sealed envelopes labeled only with dates, each corresponding to days immediately before the disappearances. The contents were puzzling: pages of irregular handwriting, sketches of corridors that didn't appear on any map, and symbols resembling technical diagrams mixed with frantic notes. One drawing showed a room marked with a circle, and an arrow pointing to a rectangular object labeled resonant frame. Another sketch depicted a sequence of figures standing in a semicircle, with annotations reading, "Exposure time must be reduced, subjects agitated." On the back of that page, a single sentence: "The door is never locked from the inside." Even more disturbing was a short, typed memo attached to the documents. It referenced phase IV testing and indicated that behavioral responses had become erratic and unpredictable in recent sessions. The memo urged immediate suspension of all work until an external review could be conducted. However, the signature line was blank, and the memo bore no official header, making its origin impossible to verify. Experts who viewed the locker's contents noted that the handwriting did not match that of any known employee, suggesting either an unidentified participant or a deliberate attempt to obscure authorship. Meanwhile, survivors of the original staff began to report strange psychological effects months after the fire. Some described recurring dreams of narrow hallways and humming equipment. Others said they felt drawn to return to the site without understanding why. A few mentioned instances of déjà vu when reviewing old photographs of the building, claiming certain rooms felt disturbingly familiar despite insisting they had never entered them. Psychologists speculated these symptoms might stem from trauma or stress, but a minority of researchers proposed a more unnerving possibility: that the missing employees in the fire were linked through exposure to unknown environmental phenomena within the archive. Then came the most startling discovery. During digitization of the remaining salvage items, a technician found an audio cassette mislabeled as a standard interview recording. When played, it contained only low-frequency tones, barely audible but producing a physical sensation in listeners, described as pressure behind the eyes. At the 7-minute mark, the tone shifted slightly, and in the background, faint shuffling sounds could be heard, followed by a metallic scraping. Some listeners claimed to make out whispered voices layered beneath the frequencies, though spectral analysis could not definitively confirm speech. The lead technician who processed the tape later resigned, stating only that the sound didn't feel like something recorded, it felt like something waiting. Attempts to trace the cassette's origin failed. The numbering sequence didn't match any catalog, and the tape stock itself was from a manufacturer that had ceased production a decade earlier. Yet the cassette case looked brand new. Archivists concluded it had either been mislabeled decades before, or deliberately planted among the rubble during the chaotic cleanup phase. Neither explanation accounted for the nature of the sounds. With every new clue, one question grew heavier: what were the missing employees exposed to in the days before they vanished, and had it followed them into the fire? As the investigation stretched into the early 1990s, the last major breakthrough came from an unexpected source: a retired structural engineer who had worked on the archive's original blueprints decades earlier. After years of silence, he agreed to be interviewed under anonymity. His testimony introduced an entirely new layer to the mystery. According to him, the foundation of the building contained an undocumented chamber, constructed at the insistence of a federal contractor. The chamber was shielded with dense composite materials typically used in research facilities requiring acoustic isolation. Its purpose was never disclosed to the engineering team, but the contractor repeatedly emphasized that the room must be impervious to external resonance and electromagnetic interference. When asked if he had ever seen anything like that in a standard archive, the engineer responded simply, "Archives don't need silence that deep." His statement aligned with notes found in the recovered sketches, particularly references to frequency thresholds and behavioral resonance windows. Some experts began to theorize that the facility had housed experimental equipment designed to influence human perception or emotional states, technology that might have been unstable or improperly tested. If such equipment malfunctioned or was misused, it could explain the erratic behavior of staff, the escalating secrecy, and the sudden need to eliminate all physical evidence of the project. But without the devices themselves, removed in the days after the fire, no definitive conclusions could be drawn. The final missing piece emerged during a routine review of old emergency service logs. A firefighter who had been on the scene the night of the disaster submitted a written statement that had somehow gone unfilled for years. In it, he described descending into the lower basement and encountering a strange phenomenon, a thick, unmoving haze suspended in the air, unaffected by ventilation or movement. When he shined his flashlight into the haze, the beam fragmented, scattering in multiple directions like light hitting a prism. He reported hearing a faint pulsing hum, rhythmic and mechanical, radiating from somewhere behind the collapsed wall. Before he and his partner could investigate further, a superior officer ordered an immediate evacuation due to structural instability. The wall was later demolished during cleanup, and the space behind it was never formally documented. Today, the rebuilt archive stands as a modern facility, sleek and efficient, with no visible trace of the events that once consumed it. The official narrative frames the 1988 fire as a tragic accident, amplified by structural vulnerabilities and outdated safety systems. There is no mention of the disappearances, the anomalous heat signatures, or the classified materials quietly removed before dawn. Yet those who have studied the case agree on one thing. As for the 5 missing employees, their fates remain unresolved. No bodies were recovered, no confirmed sightings documented, no personal effects found in the ruins. And yet, in the years following the incident, scattered reports emerged from neighboring cities, individuals matching their descriptions observed wandering late at night, moving with dazed hesitation, as though unsure of where they were or who they had been. None of these sightings were ever verified, but the stories persist, whispered among those who continue to dig into the archive's past. Even more unsettling are the rumors circulating among current staff. They claim that, on certain nights, when the building is quiet and the air ducts vibrate just slightly, a low-frequency hum can still be heard beneath the floor. A vibration that doesn't match any electrical system. A tone that seems to rise and fall, almost like breathing. Most dismiss it as imagination, the residue of old legends. But a few who have stayed late swear that the sound grows louder the closer you walk to the western wall of the basement, the one reconstructed over the space that was never officially documented. And if you press your ear against that wall long enough, they say, you might hear something else beneath the hum. Not machinery, not ventilation, something softer, something moving. The investigation is closed, the files are sealed, but the story of the Boston Archive fire, and the vanished witnesses, remains far from over.